You're completely exhausted. There is genuinely nothing left. And then a message arrives. A colleague, a friend, maybe your partner, asking for something. Not a big thing, just a favor. And before you've consciously processed the question, the word yes is already in motion. Your mouth opens. Sure, no problem. And somewhere in the half second between the ask and the answer, you didn't choose that. It just happened. And then the familiar knot arrives. Not exactly resentment, not even frustration. Closer to guilt. Like you almost got away with saying no, and the no almost made it out. And now you're sitting there wondering how your mouth got so far ahead of the rest of you. If that sequence is familiar enough that you've stopped noticing it, I want to start there. Because here's what I want you to know before anything else. That automatic yes isn't a character flaw. It's not weakness. It's not excessive niceness. It's a program. And programs run in the background for a reason. The common frame, the one you've probably been given by therapists, self-help books, people who love you, is that you have a limit problem. That you need to learn to say no. That you respect yourself too little. That you're too nice. But Dr. Harriet Braiker, writing in 2001, identified something that fundamentally changes that frame. People-pleasing, she found, isn't about niceness at all. It has the same architecture as any other compulsive dependency. A trigger, a reward, and a withdrawal response that fires every time you consider withholding the behavior. An approval addiction, not a metaphor. A self-reinforcing cycle with a predictable structure. What I'm going to show you is a 3-stage progression, where this starts, where it goes if it runs unchecked, and what it actually looks like to interrupt it. And once you know which stage you're in right now, the path forward looks completely different. Because the work at stage 2 and the work at stage 3 are not the same work. The mainstream version of this is something you've probably heard until the words have lost their meaning. Set better limits, learn to say no, value yourself more. And maybe you've tried. Maybe it worked for a week. And then someone looked at you with the slightest disappointment after a no. Not even anger, just disappointment. And everything collapsed again. Same pattern, new week. The advice isn't completely wrong. People who've run this pattern long enough do often end up with weaker limits. That part is accurate. But calling it a limit problem misses something important about why the no feels physically dangerous. Not just uncomfortable, physically dangerous. Like saying it might actually end the relationship. That level of threat response doesn't come from not knowing how to set limits. It comes from somewhere much deeper. Roth, Asor, and colleagues, writing in 2009, studied what happens to children who receive conditional parental regard, love that arrives when they perform, accommodate, or don't cause disruption, and withdraws when they don't. Their finding: conditional parental love doesn't just shape behavior. It produces a specific kind of self-worth that is structurally incapable of generating its own stability. The child's nervous system learns that their fundamental okayness depends on others' approval to remain intact. Not as a belief, as a wiring. If your brain genuinely cannot tell the difference between "this person is mildly disappointed in me" and "I may be in danger," no worksheet is going to touch that. Because you're not dealing with a belief. You're dealing with a threat response built into the operating system. Because this isn't a personality trait at all. It's a program. And to understand how to interrupt a program, you need to understand how it was installed. People-pleasing is a survival algorithm. Not a metaphor, literally. Your nervous system runs a program that was written in your childhood, and it runs that program in your adult life exactly the way a computer runs software. Automatically, in the background, without asking your permission. The program has 3 stages of progression, and right now, you're somewhere in that progression. The algorithm originates in conditional love, when approval was tied to performance, accommodation, or caretaking. When warmth wasn't unconditional, your brain made a calculation. Disapproval equals abandonment risk. And it wrote a program. Keep people happy, stay safe. Haynes and Shute, in a 2023 meta-analysis across 31 separate samples, found that greater parental conditional regard predicted significantly higher contingent self-esteem, a correlation of R equals 0.29. Contingent self-esteem is the technical name for self-worth that depends on meeting others' expectations to remain stable, as opposed to self-worth that generates its own stability from the inside. 31 separate samples. The mechanism isn't theoretical. It isn't rare. Your brain didn't make this calculation because something was wrong with it. It made this calculation because the environment made it the rational one. 31 separate samples. The mechanism isn't theoretical. Let me show you what it looks like across a lifetime, because it doesn't stay the same. The approval trap progression. 3 stages. Most people who've spent time in self-help are somewhere in stage 2. I'll show you exactly what that looks like. But stage 3 is the one almost no one has language for yet. And that absence of language is part of what makes it so hard to recognize from the inside. So when we get there, pay attention. Stage 1 is where most people think they are. Stage 2 is where most of them actually are. And stage 3 is the one almost no one has language for. But once you hear it, you will not be able to unrecognize it. Stage 1. Adaptive accommodation. This is actually functional. You adjust your behavior to the people around you, but your internal reference point, your own sense of what you want and what you're willing to do, is intact. You're choosing to accommodate. The choice is still yours. The person at stage 1 is flexible. The person beginning to move towards stage 2 starts to lose access to, what do I actually want? Before checking, what does this person expect from me? Stage 2. Compulsive pleasing. It's a Tuesday afternoon. Your colleague asks you to cover their shift. Again. You've said yes 4 times this month. You're already behind on your own work. And you open your mouth and hear yourself saying, "Sure, no problem." And the strange part isn't the yes. The strange part is that you didn't decide to say yes. It just happened. Because the alternative, their disappointment, set off something that felt indistinguishable from alarm. That's not niceness. That's the approval alarm. At stage 2, the alarm fires every time you consider withholding accommodation. Not because you decided to accommodate, but because your nervous system can no longer tell the difference between someone might be slightly inconvenienced and I might be in danger. Others' approval has become the primary source of self-worth. Not one input among several, the primary one. And you cannot reason your way past a threat alarm. And then there's stage 3. This is the one most people have never heard described. But once they hear it, they cannot unrecognize it. Stage 3. Identity Erasure. Stage 3 is where so many automatic yeses have accumulated over so long that the internal reference point, the "what do I actually want?" has been overwritten. Not weakened, not blurred, overwritten. You've accommodated others' preferences so many times that yours are no longer reliably accessible. At stage 2, you have trouble saying no. At stage 3, you don't know what you'd want to say yes to instead. If you've ever said, "I don't know what I want anymore," not because your life is complicated, but because the question itself feels blank, you're describing stage 3. And the reason almost no one has given you language for that experience is that most frameworks for this stop at stage 2. Stage 1, 2, or 3. I'm going to ask you that at the end. But I want you to be sitting with it now, because the answer matters for everything that comes after. None of these stages are character grades. Stage 2 isn't worse than stage 1. Stage 3 isn't a personal failure. They're positions in a progression that was started for you, not by you. The algorithm wasn't installed by accident. It was installed by a relationship. Building on what Roth, Asor, and colleagues established in 2009, conditional parental regard produces exactly the self-worth profile we'd expect to generate this kind of algorithm. A self that cannot validate itself. A self that learned, very young, to outsource its stability to others. If your parents' warmth was reliably present only when you performed, accommodated, or didn't cause disruption, your brain didn't develop a flaw. It solved an engineering problem. To stay safe and maintain connection, keep them happy. A child cannot consent to that calculation. It just runs. And it keeps running long after the environment that required it is gone. Here is the most important thing I want you to hear in this entire video. This isn't who you are. This is what you learned to do. The approval algorithm isn't a personality trait. It's adaptive software that was genuinely effective when you were 8 years old. It maintained connection. It reduced risk. It worked in the environment it was designed for. The problem isn't that you learned it. The problem is that it's still running on hardware that is now decades older, in an environment that is nothing like the one it was written for. Learned patterns respond to new input. That's not a motivational statement. That's mechanistically how the nervous system works. If this is connecting something you felt but never had language for, that exact feeling is why this channel exists. If you want more of this kind of work, subscribing means you'll actually see the next one. The algorithm doesn't stay in one place. It finds new terrain. At 15, it's explicit and social, peer acceptance, parental approval, fitting in. The no is scary because the group is the entire world. By 25, it's migrated into professional and romantic contexts. The colleague who takes on everyone's work. The partner who never expresses a preference. The yeses multiply. By 35, the algorithm has become the operating system. Stage 3 symptoms begin to surface. The quiet flatness, the blank response to, "What do you want to do?" The identity diffusion arriving not as a crisis, but as a kind of numbness. You might recognize yourself at multiple points. That's not inconsistency, that's the algorithm finding new terrain. Same program, different contexts. Dr. Lindsay Gibson, writing in 2019, examined a specific and particularly concentrated version of this dynamic, the emotionally immature parent. This pattern, where the parent's emotional needs consistently override the child's, isn't universal. Not every approval algorithm was installed by an emotionally immature parent. The research is broader than that. But Gibson's work illuminates the mechanism with unusual precision. What she found: children of emotionally immature parents learn early that their authentic self is a liability in the parental relationship. Expressing genuine preferences risks the parent's approval. Over time, the child builds an approval-seeking self, oriented entirely around managing the parent's emotional state, and that constructed self becomes increasingly difficult to distinguish from identity itself. We're not talking about a behavior pattern at this point. We're talking about something that operates at the level of identity formation. Sonens and colleagues in 2022 identified something sharp about the mechanism itself. When children experience both conditional positive regard and conditional negative regard, warmth when they perform, withdrawal when they don't, the contingent self-esteem outcomes are more severe than either type alone. The inconsistency amplifies the dependency. In academic contexts specifically, this pattern appears particularly pronounced, though the mechanism of alternating conditional warmth and withdrawal applies more broadly to contexts where approval is contingent and unpredictable. The irregular reward makes the need for approval stronger, not weaker. Like any system trained on variable reinforcement, the algorithm becomes more, not less, tenacious. Here's the part most people stop at, and here's why stopping there is exactly the wrong move. Most of the conversation about this focuses on the behavior, the yes you didn't mean to say, the limit you didn't hold. But the algorithm doesn't live in your behavior. It lives in your threat detection system. And that's why every version of "just set better limits" eventually collapses under real social pressure. Because you're trying to change the output without touching the program. The behavior is downstream. The threat response is upstream. The real question isn't, "Why can't I say no?" The real question is, whose preferences have I been running? Because stage 3 isn't just difficult, it's epistemically disorienting. You're trying to figure out what you want using a system that was optimized to figure out what others want. The instrument of self-knowledge has been repurposed. You cannot use it to find yourself when it's been calibrated to find them. The algorithm isn't broken. It was designed for a world that no longer exists. And the first step isn't stopping it. It's noticing that it's running. Because you cannot interrupt a program you cannot see. So what do you actually do with this? Understanding the algorithm is step 1. Here's step 2. Understanding that this is an algorithm, not a personality trait, changes what the work actually looks like. You're not trying to become a different person. You're not trying to care less about other people. You're trying to run a different program. The goal isn't perfect limit setting. It's not the absence of the approval pull that may never completely disappear, and that's not the target. The goal is restoring the internal reference point, the moment where you can feel the alarm activate, recognize it for what it is, and choose your response from there. That gap, between the alarm and the automatic yes, is where autonomy lives. The practice is called the micro-no. 2 levels. Which level you start at depends on where you are in the progression. Level 1. For stage 2 and stage 3 both. Say no to one zero-consequence request this week. Not a difficult relationship, not a high-stakes situation. An unsolicited food recommendation. A minor task no one will notice you declined. The goal is not the no itself. The goal is proving to your nervous system, with one single data point, that no does not end in abandonment. You're not training your relationships, you're training your threat detection system. Level 2. Once level 1 is in place, insert a time delay before any yes. Let me think about it is not a refusal, it's a gap. The automatic approval reflex needs a pause before it can become a choice. Let me think about it creates that pause without triggering the full identity collapse response that a direct no might generate at stage 2 or stage 3. The no can come later. First, the pause. The 2-level escalation is the difference between this and generic advice. The algorithm was installed at a specific intensity. The reprogramming has to meet it there. One thing to know before you try this. Level 1 will feel disproportionately uncomfortable, even when the stakes are genuinely low. Your nervous system will register a consequence-free no as a high-stakes threat. That response is not a sign you're doing it wrong. It's a sign the algorithm is real, and you've just started running a counter test. And if you recognize someone in your life who seems to be at stage 3, who genuinely doesn't seem to know what they want anymore, the last thing they need is advice to assert themselves more. The identity reference point has to be rebuilt before the no has anywhere to land. The origin story comes first. People-pleasing isn't a personality trait, it's a survival algorithm. The approval trap progression, 3 stages. Adaptive accommodation, where you're still choosing. Compulsive pleasing, where the choosing stops. Identity erasure, where the chooser disappears. And once you know which stage you're in, the path forward is specific. You came in wondering why you can't just say no. Now you know. It's not weakness. It's not excessive niceness. It's not a limit problem. It's a childhood survival program running in an adult life. And programs, unlike personality traits, respond to new instructions. You're not broken. You never were. What you've been calling people-pleasing, especially if you've been in stage 2 or stage 3 for a long time, has been your nervous system doing exactly what it learned to do. The path forward isn't self-criticism. It's reprogramming. Drop a comment with just the number 1, 2, or 3. That's it. I want to see where most people watching this are in the progression. If what you just heard about the approval algorithm resonated, the next video connects directly to this one. The people in your life who've learned to exploit exactly this algorithm. Small, unsolicited favors, gifts before asks, the reciprocity trap. If your approval system is already primed to comply, they don't have to ask twice. That one's already up.